"I am not moving," she snarled, planting herself deeper into the plush leather. Window seat, 1A, hers. That nobody in a hoodie wasn't getting it. The entitlement dripped, toxic and thick enough to choke on. But she didn't see it. How could she? Blinded by her own reflection in the polished windows. She couldn't possibly know the quiet girl she was bullying held a secret, a silent promise of reckoning. A storm was brewing far beyond the New York blizzard. One phone call. That's all it would take. And Cynthia, she had no idea that her cruelty was about to unravel everything. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 was thick enough to choke on. Outside, a winter storm was hammering New York City, turning the tarmac into a sheet of grey ice. Inside, the tension was rising with every delayed flight notification on the departure board. In the corner of the exclusive Centurion Lounge, Chloe Sterling sat quietly. She was 19, dressed in an oversized grey hoodie, black leggings, and worn-out Converse sneakers. She had a pair of noise-cancelling headphones around her neck and an old paperback book in her hands. To the casual observer, she looked like a college student flying standby on a budget ticket. She didn't wear jewelry, she didn't have a designer handbag. She was just there. Across the lounge, the atmosphere was entirely different. Cynthia Cromwell was making sure everyone knew she had arrived. She was a woman who wore her wealth like armor, a loud, abrasive armor made of Louis Vuitton and aggressive perfume. She was shouting into her phone, pacing back and forth between the buffet and the bar. "I don't care what the weather report says, Richard," Cynthia screeched, causing a businessman nearby to wince. "I need to be in Aspen by tonight. If this flight is delayed one more time, I'm going to have someone's head on a platter. Do you hear me?" She hung up the phone with a dramatic huff and looked around the lounge with disdain. Her eyes landed on Chloe. Cynthia frowned. She walked over to the buffet, grabbed a sparkling water, and marched past Chloe's chair, purposefully bumping into the girl's carry-on bag with her shin. "Watch it," Cynthia snapped, though she was the one who had initiated the contact. Chloe looked up, startled. "Oh, sorry, I can move it." "You shouldn't have luggage in the walkway," Cynthia scoffed, looking Chloe up and down. "God, they let anyone into these lounges nowadays. Credit card points have ruined the exclusivity of this place." Chloe didn't respond. She just pulled her bag closer and went back to her book. She was used to this. Her father, Reginald Sterling, was one of the wealthiest black men in North America. He owned Sterling Heavy Industries, a conglomerate that had quietly acquired logistics firms, shipping lanes, and even a mid-sized airline in the last decade. He had raised Chloe to be humble, to observe rather than announce herself. Real power, Reginald always told her, doesn't need to shout. So Chloe stayed silent. She didn't mention that her father had actually built the encryption software that secured the bank transaction Cynthia had likely just used to buy her drink. She just waited. Finally, the announcement came over the PA system. "Flight 492 to Aspen is now boarding. We are inviting first-class passengers to board at Gate B12. Cynthia Cromwell shot out of her seat like a bullet. She gathered her furs and her 3 carry-on bags, clearly over the limit, and stormed toward the exit. Chloe packed her book away slowly, took a sip of her water, and followed a few paces behind. At the gate, the chaos was palpable. The storm had made everyone edgy. The gate agent, a tired-looking woman named Sarah, was trying to manage a crowd of angry passengers whose connecting flights had been cancelled. Cynthia pushed through the crowd, shoving a young mother aside. "Excuse me, first class coming through, priority boarding." She slammed her boarding pass onto the scanner. It beeped green. She didn't even look at Sarah, she just marched down the jet bridge. Chloe approached the desk a moment later. She smiled at Sarah. "Rough day?" Sarah looked up, surprised by the kindness. "You have no idea. Stay warm out there." Chloe scanned her phone. Her ticket was for seat 1A. It was her favorite seat. She liked the bulkhead window because she could sleep against the wall without being disturbed. She walked down the jet bridge, ready to put her headphones on and drift off. She had no idea that seat 1A was already occupied. When Chloe stepped onto the plane, the first-class cabin was chilly. The flight attendants were busy prepping drinks, trying to get the flight out before the de-icing window closed. Chloe walked to the front row. She stopped. Cynthia Cromwell was settled comfortably into seat 1A. She had her shoes off, her feet resting on the bulkhead wall. Her coat was draped over the armrest, and her bags were shoved into the overhead bin, taking up the space for both 1A and 1B. Chloe checked her phone again. Definitely seat 1A. "Excuse me," Chloe said softly. Cynthia didn't look up from her iPad. She was aggressively swiping through emails. "Mom," Chloe said a little louder. Cynthia pulled one earbud out and glared. "What?" "I think you're in my seat," Chloe said, showing her the digital boarding pass. "I have 1A. Cynthia let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. She looked at Chloe's hoodie, her sneakers, and her natural hair. The look on Cynthia's face wasn't just annoyance, it was pure, distilled prejudice. "You must be mistaken, honey," Cynthia said, her voice dripping with condescension. "This is first class. Economy is back there. Way back there." She pointed a manicured finger toward the rear of the plane. "I know where economy is," Chloe said, her voice steady. "But my ticket is for 1A. You're in 1A. "I am sitting here," Cynthia snapped. "I have status with this airline. I am a Platinum Medallion member. My husband is Richard Cromwell, the CEO of Cromwell Estates. I always sit in 1A. "That's nice," Chloe said. "But today your ticket isn't for 1A. Can you please check your boarding pass?" Cynthia's face turned red. She wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone who looked like Chloe. "I am not moving. I was here first. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Go find an empty seat in the back." By now the commotion had attracted attention. A flight attendant, a tall man named David, hurried over. "Is there a problem here?" David asked. "Yes," Cynthia said, pointing an accusing finger at Chloe. "This girl is harassing me. She's trying to scam a first-class seat. She probably snuck up from coach. You need to escort her back to her section." David looked at Chloe. "Miss, may I see your boarding pass?" Chloe held out her phone. David scanned it. His eyes widened slightly. "Miss Sterling." "Yes," Chloe said. "This is definitely seat 1A, David said. He turned to Cynthia. "Mom, I need to see your boarding pass, please." Cynthia huffed, rolling her eyes. "This is ridiculous. It's on my phone somewhere." She fumbled with her device, unlocking it and scrolling. Finally, she shoved the screen in David's face. David looked at it. "Mom, your seat is 4C. That's an aisle seat in the last row of first class." "I don't want the aisle," Cynthia shouted. "I want the window. And I don't want to sit next to the galley where it's noisy. I am staying right here." "Mom, you have to sit in your assigned seat," David said, his patience thinning. "The flight is full. We have a passenger assigned to this seat." Cynthia looked at Chloe with pure venom. "Her? You're going to move me for her? Look at her. She looks like she's going to a hip-hop concert, not Aspen. She probably bought that ticket with stolen miles." The cabin went silent. The racial undertones of Cynthia's comment hung in the air like toxic smoke. Chloe's jaw tightened. She took a deep breath. She reached into her pocket and texted her father 3 words. "It's happening again." "Mom," David said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming stern. "That language is unacceptable. You need to move to your assigned seat now, or we will have to remove you from the aircraft." Cynthia stood up, but she didn't move to the aisle. She got right in David's face. "Do you know who I am?" she hissed. "I fly this airline 3 times a month. I spend more on flights in a year than you make in a decade. If you touch me, I will sue you. I will sue this airline, and I will have your job. Do you understand?" She turned to Chloe. "And you little brat, you think you can just waltz in here and take what belongs to people who actually work for a living? My husband builds cities. What do you do? Sell drugs." "Ma'am," David shouted. "No," Chloe said. Her voice was surprisingly calm, cutting through the noise. She stepped forward, looking Cynthia dead in the eye. "I don't sell drugs, and I don't steal seats. I'm asking you one last time, please move." "Make me," Cynthia sneered. She sat back down, buckled her seatbelt, and crossed her arms. "I'm not moving. Go sit in 4C if you want a seat. Or better yet, go sit on the wing." David looked helpless. He keyed his radio. "Captain, we have a situation in the forward cabin. Passenger refusing to deplane or move seats. Hostile behavior." A moment later, the captain emerged from the cockpit. Captain Miller was a veteran pilot with grey hair and a tired expression. He looked at Cynthia, then at Chloe. "What's the issue?" "She won't move, Captain," David explained, "and she's being abusive to the other passenger." Captain Miller looked at Cynthia. "Ma'am, federal regulations require—" "Oh, save the speech," Cynthia waved her hand dismissively. "I'm not moving. If you want to leave on time, you'll find this girl another seat. I'm sure there's a jump seat in the back she can strap into." Captain Miller looked at the time. They were already 10 minutes behind schedule. If they missed their de-icing slot, they would be stuck on the tarmac for 3 hours. He looked at Chloe with an apologetic expression. "Miss Sterling," the captain said softly, "I am so sorry. We can call security, but it's going to delay the flight by at least an hour. We'll have to deplane everyone to file the report. It's going to be a mess." Chloe looked at the other passengers. They were tired. They just wanted to get home or get to their vacations. She saw the young mother in row 2 looking anxious. Chloe sighed. She wasn't going to let Cynthia ruin everyone else's day. "It's okay, Captain," Chloe said. "I'll take 4C. Cynthia let out a loud, triumphant cackle. "See, I told you. They always fold. Just needed to be put in her place." David looked furious. "Miss Sterling, you don't have to—" "It's fine," Chloe said, though her hands were shaking slightly with adrenaline. "I'll take 4C. Let's just go." Chloe walked to the back of the first-class cabin. She shoved her bag into the overhead bin above row 4. She sat in the aisle seat. It was right next to the galley, just as Cynthia had said. The smell of reheating coffee and the noise of the flight attendants working was immediate. From row 1, Cynthia raised her champagne glass in a mock toast toward the back of the plane. "Cheers, sweetie," she shouted. Chloe didn't look up. She pulled out her phone. She had a reply from her father, Reginald Sterling. "Are you safe?" Chloe: "Physically, yes. Verbally assaulted. She took my seat. Captain didn't want to delay the flight, so I moved." Reginald Sterling: "Who is she?" Chloe: "Seat 1A. Name is Cynthia Cromwell. Husband is Richard Cromwell." There was a pause. 3 dots danced on the screen. Reginald Sterling: "Cromwell Estates? I was supposed to sign a logistics contract with them on Thursday. A very big contract." Chloe: "She said I probably sold drugs. She said, people like me don't belong here." Reginald Sterling: "Stay on the plane, Chloe. I'm making a call." Chloe put her phone down and stared at the seat back in front of her. The plane pushed back from the gate. The safety video began to play. Cynthia was laughing loudly in row 1, chatting up the passenger next to her, bragging about her victory. "You have to be firm with these people," she was saying. "It's the only language they understand." The plane taxied toward the runway. The engines roared to life. Chloe closed her eyes. She knew her father. She knew that making a call didn't mean he was calling customer service. It meant he was calling the board of directors. As the plane reached the edge of the runway, just as the pilot was about to throttle up for takeoff, the engine suddenly spooled down. The hum of the cabin died away. The plane came to a sudden jerking halt. A collective groan went through the cabin. "Now what?" Cynthia yelled from row 1. "Drive this thing." The intercom clicked on. It was Captain Miller. His voice sounded confused, perhaps a little shaken. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I've just received an order from Air Traffic Control and our corporate headquarters. We have been ordered to return to the gate immediately." "What?" Cynthia screamed. "No, I have a dinner reservation." "Furthermore," the captain continued, his voice trembling slightly, "I have been informed that this flight has been cancelled. Not delayed, cancelled. All passengers will need to deplane." The cabin erupted. People were shouting, groaning, and pulling out their phones. But Chloe just sat there, a small smile playing on her lips. Her phone buzzed. "Reginald Sterling, look out the window." Chloe leaned across the empty seat next to her and looked out into the snowy night. The silence on the tarmac was deafening, broken only by the whine of the auxiliary power unit as the aircraft engines shut down completely. Inside the cabin of the Airbus A321, the atmosphere was a cocktail of confusion and boiling rage. "This is absolutely unacceptable." Cynthia Cromwell was standing now, looming over the flight attendant, David. Her face was a mask of twisted fury. "You cannot cancel a flight after we've already left the gate. Do you know how much money my husband loses if I'm not at that gala tonight?" David looked pale. He was pressing his earpiece against his ear, listening to instructions from the cockpit. He looked terrified. "Ma'am, please take your seat," David stammered. "We are taxiing back to the gate. Law enforcement and corporate representatives are meeting the aircraft." Cynthia's eyes lit up with a vindictive gleam. She spun around, pointing a manicured finger back toward row 4, where Chloe was sitting calmly. "Aha! I knew it," Cynthia shrieked, her voice carrying all the way to economy. "It's her. You're calling the police for her, aren't you? I told you she was a criminal. I told you she had drugs or a weapon. You're finally doing your job." She looked at the other passengers, seeking validation. "You see? We're being inconvenienced because they let a thug onto the plane. This is what happens when you lower the standards," a few passengers murmured. Fear is contagious, and Cynthia was a master at spreading it. People turned to look at Chloe with suspicion. Was she dangerous? Was she the reason they weren't going to Aspen? Chloe didn't flinch. She just packed her book back into her bag. She put her headphones around her neck. She checked her phone. "Reginald Sterling. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, Princess, but Mr. Henderson is waiting at the jet bridge. He will handle the transition." Chloe. "Thanks, Dad. Did you have to cancel the whole flight?" Reginald Sterling. "Nobody treats a Sterling like that. Nobody. Besides, I bought the plane." Chloe blinked. "He bought the plane?" She shook her head. Her father's definition of solving a problem was always scorched earth. The aircraft jolted as the tug locked onto the front gear. Slowly, painfully, they were dragged back to gate B12. When the seatbelt sign turned off, Cynthia was the first one up. She grabbed her bags and shoved her way to the front door, blocking everyone else. "Get this door open," she commanded. "I want to see this little delinquent in handcuffs." The cabin door hissed open. The cold winter air rushed in. Standing in the jet bridge were not just 2 Port Authority police officers. There was also a man in an immaculate bespoke Italian suit. He was holding a tablet and looking very stressed. This was Arthur Henderson, the station manager for the entire Northeast region. Cynthia stepped out, ready to hold court. "Finally," she yelled at the officers. "Officer, that girl in seat 4C, well, she stole 4C after trying to steal my seat. She is the problem. I want to press charges for harassment and endangerment." Arthur Henderson stepped forward. He didn't even look at Cynthia. He looked past her, scanning the cabin. "Excuse me, ma'am," Henderson said, his voice clipped and professional. He brushed past Cynthia as if she were a piece of luggage. Cynthia gasped. "Excuse me, do you know who I am?" Henderson ignored her. He walked onto the plane, past the galley, past the gawking passengers in rows 1 through 3, and stopped at row 4. The entire first-class cabin held its breath. Cynthia stood at the door, a smirk on her face, waiting for the handcuffs to come out. Henderson bowed. It wasn't a nod, it was a full, respectful bow. "Miss Sterling," Henderson said, his voice trembling slightly. "On behalf of the entire airline, I offer my deepest, most sincere apologies. This is a catastrophic failure of our hospitality standards." Chloe stood up, shouldering her backpack. "It's okay, Mr. Henderson. It's not your fault. The crew did the best they could." "Your father is extremely displeased," Henderson said, sweating despite the cold air. "He has instructed us to deplane you immediately. The Gulfstream G650 is fueled and waiting at the private terminal. We have a car waiting on the tarmac to take you there directly. You'll be in Aspen before this commercial flight would have even reached cruising altitude." Cynthia's jaw dropped. Her handbag slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor with a thud. Gulfstream, private terminal, Miss Sterling. Chloe walked into the aisle. David, the flight attendant, looked at her with wide eyes. "Thank you, David," Chloe said softly as she passed him. "I'm sorry about the trouble." She walked to the front of the plane. Cynthia was standing there, frozen, blocking the exit. "You're in my way," Chloe said. It was the same thing Cynthia had said to her in the lounge, but this time the weight behind the words was different. Who are you?" Cynthia whispered, her face draining of color. "I'm the girl you kicked out of seat 1A, Chloe said, "and you're the woman who just got this flight cancelled." Henderson stepped in. "Mrs. Cromwell, please step aside. You are blocking a VIP." "VIP?" Cynthia sputtered, her brain unable to process the shift in power dynamics. "She's a nobody. She's wearing a hoodie." "She is the daughter of Reginald Sterling," Henderson said, his voice ice cold. the majority shareholder of the holding company that acquired this airline 3 days ago. Technically, Mrs. Cromwell, she owns the seat you are standing in." The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear the snow falling outside. Cynthia looked at Chloe, she looked at the hoodie, she looked at the sneakers, and then she looked at the eyes that held the quiet confidence of generational wealth. "Move," Henderson barked. Cynthia stumbled backward, hitting the wall of the jet bridge. Chloe stepped off the plane. She didn't look back. She walked down the stairs to the tarmac where a black SUV with tinted windows was waiting. A driver opened the door, she slid inside, and the car sped away toward the private airfield. Back on the jet bridge, reality was starting to crash down on Cynthia Cromwell. But the nightmare was only just beginning. Chaos erupted in the terminal. The moment the announcement was made that the flight was cancelled due to a security protocol regarding ownership management, the other 150 passengers turned on Cynthia. "You got our flight cancelled," a man in a business suit shouted, getting in Cynthia's face. "I have a meeting." "My baby needs to get home," the mother from row 2 yelled. Cynthia was backed into a corner near the gate desk. She was hyperventilating. This couldn't be happening. She was Cynthia Cromwell. She was untouchable. These people were peasants. "It's not my fault," she screamed, her voice cracking. "It's that brat. She planned this. It's a conspiracy." She scrambled for her phone. She needed Richard. Richard fixed everything. Richard would call the airline CEO. Richard would sue them all. Her hands shook as she dialed her husband's number. Ring, ring, ring. Pick up, damn it," she hissed. Finally, the line connected. "Richard," Cynthia wailed immediately, "you will not believe what just happened. I have been treated like an animal. This airline—" "Cynthia." Richard's voice sounded strange, breathless, panicked. "Where are you?" "I'm at JFK. They cancelled my flight because some little ghetto brat claimed her daddy owns the airline. You need to call legal. I want to sue." "Shut up," Richard screamed. The sound was so loud Cynthia had to pull the phone away from her ear. She froze. Richard never raised his voice at her. He just threw money at problems until they went away. "Richard," she whispered, "did you— Oh God, Cynthia, tell me you didn't." Richard was hyperventilating on the other end. "Tell me you didn't get into an altercation with a girl named Chloe." Cynthia felt a cold pit open in her stomach. She stole my seat, Richard. She was rude to me. She didn't look like she belonged in first class." "You stupid, arrogant woman," Richard roared. "Do you know who that was? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "She said her name was Sterling, but—" "Sterling," Richard screamed. "Reginald Sterling, Sterling Heavy Industries. Cynthia, I am sitting in a boardroom right now. I have been sitting here for 4 hours, waiting to sign the merger deal. The deal that is going to save our company from bankruptcy." Cynthia went numb. "Bankruptcy? What do you mean?" "We're rich." "We are leveraged to the hilt," Richard cried. "The real estate market crashed last quarter. This deal with Sterling was the only thing keeping us afloat. If he signs, we get $100 million in liquidity. If he walks, we lose everything. The house, the cars, the Aspen property, everything." I didn't know," Cynthia stammered. 5 minutes ago," Richard said, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. 5 minutes ago, Reginald Sterling's secretary walked into the conference room. She put a phone on the table. It was playing a video. Cynthia closed her eyes. "A video?" "A video from inside the plane, Cynthia," Richard sobbed. "Someone filmed you. They filmed you calling his daughter a drug dealer. They filmed you screaming about your status. They filmed you abusing the staff." The blood drained from Cynthia's face. She looked around the gate area. Everyone had their phones out. Everyone was recording her right now. "Mr. Sterling called in on the conference line," Richard continued, his voice sounding dead. "He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just said, 'I don't do business with people who lack basic humanity.' If that is how his wife treats my daughter, I can only imagine how he treats his employees." "No," Cynthia whimpered. "Richard, fix it." "There is no fixing it," Richard shrieked. "He pulled the deal, Cynthia. It's gone. The contract is void. And then he did something else." "What?" "He dumped his existing stock in Cromwell Estates. He triggered a sell-off. Cynthia, the stock price just dropped 40% in 10 minutes. The board is calling for my resignation. I'm finished. We're finished." But I just wanted my seat, Cynthia whispered, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. You wanted a seat, Richard spat, and it cost us our entire life. Don't bother coming to Aspen. There is no house in Aspen anymore. The bank just called in the loan. The line went dead. Cynthia lowered the phone slowly. The terminal was spinning. The angry passengers were still yelling at her, but their voices sounded underwater. Mr. Henderson, the station manager, approached her. He was accompanied by the 2 police officers. Mrs. Cromwell, Henderson said coldly, I have just received word from corporate. Your platinum medallion status has been permanently revoked. You are banned for life from this airline and all its partners. But how do I get home? Cynthia asked, her voice small and broken. I believe there is a bus terminal in Queens, Henderson said, checking his watch. Or perhaps you can walk. I hear it's good for the character. Officer, Henderson nodded to the police. She's all yours. We'd like to press charges for disrupting the operation of a federal flight and disorderly conduct. The officers stepped forward. Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back. As the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked onto Cynthia's wrists that had been adorned with diamond bracelets only hours ago, the crowd at the gate erupted into applause. They cheered, they clapped. Someone shouted, Karma! Cynthia Cromwell was led away through the terminal weeping, her fur coat dragging on the dirty floor. She had wanted to be the center of attention. She had wanted everyone to know who she was. Now everybody knew, and halfway across the world, on a live stream, the video of her meltdown was trending #1 on Twitter. The title of the video, Karen steals billionaire's seat. Loses everything in 10 minutes. If the cancellation of the flight was the spark, the internet was the gasoline. By the time Cynthia Cromwell was processed at the Queens County Central Booking Facility, her life as she knew it had been incinerated. She sat on a cold metal bench in a holding cell that smelled of bleach and despair, still wearing her mink coat, which now looked like a costume from a failed play. She was allowed 1 phone call. She called Richard again. He didn't answer. She called him a second time, straight to voicemail. She called her best friend, frantic for bail money. The friend, a socialite named Beatrice, who usually lived for gossip, picked up on the first ring. Beatrice, thank God, Cynthia sobbed into the receiver. You have to help me. I'm in jail. Richard isn't answering. I need bail. Cynthia. Beatrice's voice was chilly. Don't call me again. What? Beatrice, it's me. We're supposed to go to St. Bart's next week. There is no St. Bart's, Cynthia. Beatrice hissed. Have you seen the news? You're trending. They're calling you the first-class monster. My husband is on the board of 3 charities with Richard. He told me to cut ties immediately. We can't be associated with racists. It's bad for the brand. Click. Cynthia stared at the dead receiver. The guard, a heavy-set woman who looked like she took zero nonsense, tapped the glass. Time's up, princess. Back to the bench. It took 12 hours for a public defender to get her arraigned. She was released on her own recognizance because her assets were frozen. When she walked out of the precinct, she expected Richard's black Mercedes to be waiting. Instead, she was met by a wall of flashing lights. The paparazzi were there. Not the glamorous red carpet photographers she used to pay to take her picture, but the hungry, predatory tabloids. Cynthia, did you really call a teenager a drug dealer? Mrs. Cromwell, how does it feel to bankrupt your husband? Smile for the camera, Karen. She shielded her face with her handbag and hailed a yellow taxi. She didn't have any cash. She had to pray her credit card still worked. It didn't. When she arrived at their penthouse on Park Avenue, a sprawling triplex overlooking the city, the doorman, a man she had ignored for 5 years, stopped her. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cromwell, he said, not making eye contact. I can't let you up. Excuse me, Cynthia shrieked, exhaustion making her slur. I live here. This is my building. Not anymore, the doorman said. Mr. Cromwell left about an hour ago. He left instructions with the building management. He's changed the locks. He said you can collect your personal effects from the service entrance tomorrow morning. The movers are already packing the furniture. He left me, Cynthia whispered. He filed for divorce this morning, ma'am, the doorman said, handing her a white envelope. A process server dropped this off for you. Cynthia tore open the envelope. It was a restraining order and a divorce petition. citing irreconcilable differences and gross negligence causing financial ruin. Cynthia collapsed on the sidewalk. Passers-by stepped around her, some recognized her from the video and took photos. She was homeless. In less than 24 hours, she had gone from a platinum medallion billionaire's wife to a homeless woman sitting on the pavement of Park Avenue. The fallout continued for weeks. The Cromwell estate stock plummeted to pennies. The board of directors sued Richard for breach of fiduciary duty. To settle the debts, the bankruptcy court ordered a liquidation of all assets. The yacht? Sold. The Hamptons estate? Seized. The jewelry? Auctioned. But the worst part for Cynthia wasn't the loss of money, it was the loss of status. She tried to go to her favorite restaurant, Le Bernardin. The maitre d' stopped her at the door. "We are fully booked, madam." The restaurant was empty. She tried to go to her gym. Her membership was cancelled. She was radioactive. The video of her screaming, "Do you know who I am?" was remixed into a song that went to #1 on TikTok. Everyone knew who she was. And that was the problem. The descent was not immediate. It wasn't a sudden drop off a cliff. It was a slow, agonizing slide down a mountain of razor blades. It was the kind of fall where you feel every scrape, every bruise, and every lost foothold as you tumble from the dizzying heights of the 1% to the cold, hard reality of the pavement below. For the first month after the JFK incident, as the tabloids had gleefully dubbed it, Cynthia Cromwell existed in a state of defiant, hallucinatory denial. She was staying in a cheap motel on the outskirts of Queens, a place with flickering neon signs that buzzed like trapped insects and carpets that smelled of stale cigarettes and regret. It was the only place that would take cash up front without a credit check, and cash was the only thing she had left. She had pawned her Cartier tank watch for $4,000, a fraction of its value, a robbery really, but enough, she told herself, to weather the storm until Richard came to his senses. She spent her days making phone calls on a prepaid burner phone she'd bought at a bodega. She sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, still wearing the ruins of her designer clothes, dialing numbers that she knew by heart. She called her lawyers. She called her friends. She called the country club. She even tried calling the airline again, convinced that if she just spoke to the right manager, if she could just explain the context, this whole misunderstanding would be cleared up and her platinum status would be restored. "I am a victim here," she screamed at a hapless customer service agent on day 3, pacing the small, stained room. "I was provoked. That girl, she trapped me. She baited me. You don't understand who I am." "Ma'am, please stop calling," the agent said, their voice tired and firm. "Your number has been flagged for harassment. If you continue to call this line, we will file a second restraining order. Please, move on." The line went dead. Cynthia stared at the phone, her hands shaking. "Move on," she whispered to the empty room. Move on to what? The denial began to crack in the second month. The money was running out. $4,000 vanishes quickly when you are used to spending that much on a single handbag. She had to buy food. She had to pay the motel's weekly rate, which was extortionate. And she had to buy clothes because she had fled the apartment with nothing but the mink coat on her back and the cocktail dress she was wearing. You cannot look for a new life in a cocktail dress. She found herself in a thrift store in Flushing. The smell hit her first: mothballs, dust, and other people's sweat. She picked through a rack of polyester blouses, her manicured fingers, nails now chipped and grown out, the gel polish peeling away like old paint. Recoiling at the cheap fabric. "Can I help you find something?" a sales clerk asked from behind the counter. Cynthia spun around, ready to snap. "Do I look like I shop here? Do you know who my husband is?" But the words died in her throat. She caught her reflection in a smudged mirror on the wall. The woman staring back wasn't Cynthia Cromwell, the Queen of Park Avenue. The woman in the mirror had dark circles under her eyes, greasy hair pulled back in a messy clip, and a look of desperate, feral fear. She looked like the kind of woman Cynthia used to cross the street to avoid. "No," Cynthia whispered, her voice hollow. "I'm just looking." She bought a pair of jeans that were a size too big and 2 faded t-shirts. They cost $12. She cried the entire walk back to the motel, the plastic bag cutting into her fingers. By the 3rd month, reality had set in like concrete. She was unhireable. She had applied for jobs she would have previously scoffed at. Receptionist at a dental office, sales associate at a mid-tier department store, personal shopper for a boutique in Jersey. She had swallowed her pride, which tasted like ash, and filled out the applications. But every interview ended the same way. The hiring manager would look at her resume, impressed by her charity board management experience. They would smile, then they would look at her face. A flicker of recognition would light up their eyes, not the good kind of recognition, but the kind reserved for car wrecks and scandals. Then came the inevitable click of a keyboard as they Googled her name. The results were always the same: first-class monster, racist rant at JFK, billionaire brat takes down Karen. Watch this woman lose everything in 10 minutes. The interviews always ended abruptly after that. We went in a different direction, they would say, closing their laptops. Or, more bluntly, we can't have that kind of energy in our office. It's bad for the brand. She was radioactive. Her name was a brand of toxicity. She was the woman who hated everyone, so now everyone hated her. By the 4th month, the hunger started. Real hunger, not the "I haven't eaten since brunch" hunger she used to complain about to her Pilates instructor. This was a gnawing physical pain in the center of her stomach. She had moved out of the motel and into a room in a shared basement apartment in Newark, New Jersey. Her roommates were 3 college students who played loud bass music until 3 a.m. and left dishes crusted with oatmeal in the sink for days. They didn't know who she was, or if they did, they didn't care. To them, she was just the weird, sad, older woman in the back room who couldn't pay her share of the electric bill. One rainy Tuesday, Cynthia found herself standing outside a fast food burger joint called Burger Barn. It was a fluorescent-lit box on a busy highway. A sign in the window read, "Help wanted. No experience needed. Immediate start." She stood in the rain for 20 minutes, staring at the sign. The rain soaked her cheap thrift store jacket. She thought about her husband, Richard. She had heard through the grapevine, an old acquaintance she had run into on the subway who had looked at her with pity before fleeing. That Richard was in Costa Rica. He was living in a villa with a 24-year-old yoga instructor named Destiny. He had hidden millions in offshore accounts before the crash. He was fine. He was drinking mojitos. She was the sacrifice. She was the one left burning on the altar of public opinion. She pushed open the door to the Burger Barn. The smell of old grease and sanitizer hit her like a physical blow. "I'm here for the job," she told the manager, a teenager named Kyle who had acne, a patchy beard, and looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Kyle looked her up and down, chewing gum loudly. "You ever worked a register before?" I used to manage a household budget of $50,000 a month," Cynthia said, her voice trembling. "I organized galas for the Met." "Cool," Kyle said, utterly unimpressed. "But can you press buttons on a screen and not yell at customers? Because the last lady yelled at customers." "We don't like yelling here." Cynthia closed her eyes. She thought of the private jet. She thought of the warm nuts. She thought of Chloe Sterling's calm brown eyes staring at her from seat 4C. "I can do it," Cynthia whispered. "I won't yell." 6 months later, the lunch rush at the Burger Barn was a war zone. It was chaos organized by buzzers and shouting. "Order 42. I need fries on 42. Who took the nuggets? I needed those nuggets. Drive-through is backed up. We got a timer ticking here. Move it, people." Cynthia Cromwell was sweating. The polyester uniform chafed her neck. The headset was digging into her ear. She was working the drive-through window, the most high-pressure station in the restaurant. You had to be fast. You had to be accurate. You had to be polite to people who screamed at you because their milkshake was too thick. "Welcome to Burger Barn. Would you like to try our new spicy chicken sandwich?" she recited into the microphone, her voice flat and mechanical. "Yeah, gimme 2 of those. And a large Coke. And make sure there's ice this time." "Last time you guys stiffed me on the ice," a rough voice crackled back. "That will be $14.50 at the first window," Cynthia said, suppressing the urge to roll her eyes. She tapped the screen, her fingers moving automatically. She was good at this. It turned out the same obsessive attention to detail that made her a terror to event planners made her highly efficient at organizing fast food orders. She never got an order wrong. It was a small, sad victory. A black town car pulled up to the window. Cynthia froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She recognized the car. It was a Lincoln Continental, the exact model and year Richard used to hire for airport transfers. For a second, a wild, delusional hope flared in her chest. Richard? Did he come back? Is he here to save me? Did he realize he needs me? The window rolled down. It wasn't Richard. In the back seat sat a young woman. She was typing on a laptop. She wore a simple cream-colored blouse and gold hoop earrings. She looked elegant, professional, and radiating a quiet power. Her hair was styled naturally, framing a face that was calm and focused. It was Chloe Sterling. Cynthia gasped. Her hands went numb. She dropped the bag of food she was holding. It hit the floor, fries spilling everywhere, a cascade of salt and grease. Chloe looked up at the sound. Her eyes met Cynthia's. Time seemed to stop. The noise of the kitchen, the beeping fryers, the shouting cooks, the sizzling meat faded into a dull roar. Cynthia wanted to hide. She wanted to drop to the floor and crawl away into the grease trap. She wanted the earth to open up and swallow her whole. The shame was a physical heat, burning her face, her neck, her chest. Here she was, the woman who had claimed she was too good to sit near the galley, now serving processed food through a window to the very girl she had tormented. The irony was so sharp it felt like it was cutting her skin. Chloe didn't smile. She didn't smirk. She didn't pull out her phone to record the moment. She didn't say, "Look at you now." She just looked. Her expression was unreadable. It wasn't angry. It wasn't mocking. It was observant. Like she was looking at a specimen in a jar or a ghost she hadn't expected to see. Your food," Cynthia stammered. She turned around, hands shaking violently, and grabbed a fresh bag. She shoved the fries in, messing up the order, not caring. She just wanted this interaction to be over. She wanted the window to close. She handed the bag through the window. "Here, just take it." Chloe took the bag. She placed it on the seat beside her. She didn't drive away immediately. "The total is $14.50, Cynthia whispered, staring at the ground, refusing to make eye contact. Chloe reached into her purse. She handed Cynthia a $20 bill. "Keep the change," Chloe said. Cynthia looked up, her eyes flashing. "I don't need your charity." The old venom flared up for a second, a ghost of her former self trying to protect what little dignity she had left. Chloe paused. She looked at Cynthia, really looked at her. She saw the wrinkles that hadn't been there 6 months ago. She saw the grey hair at the temples. She saw the name tag that sat crookedly on the grease-stained shirt. She saw the broken woman behind the eyes. "It's not charity," Chloe said softly. "It's a tip. You're working hard. You deserve it." The words hit Cynthia harder than any insult could have. You're working hard. In her old life, Cynthia had never worked hard. She had managed, she had directed, she had spent. But she had never actually labored. She had looked down on people who did. She had treated service workers like invisible machinery, like robots designed to serve her needs. And now, the girl she had called a criminal, the girl she had tried to humiliate, was treating her with more dignity in 10 seconds than Cynthia had shown anyone in 10 years. "Why?" Cynthia asked, her voice cracking, tears threatening to spill. "After what I did to you? Why aren't you laughing at me? Everyone else laughs." Chloe leaned forward slightly. "Because my father taught me that true power isn't about stepping on people. It's about lifting them up. And honestly, you look like you've been punished enough. I don't need to add to it. The universe did the work for me." The driver began to inch the car forward. "Wait," Cynthia said. She didn't know why she said it. The word just erupted from her. Chloe signaled the driver to stop. "Yes?" Cynthia struggled with the words. They felt foreign in her mouth. They felt heavy. She hadn't said them in years. "I'm sorry." It came out as a whisper. "I didn't hear you," Chloe said calmly. Cynthia gripped the windowsill until her knuckles turned white. Tears welled up in her eyes, cutting tracks through the grease on her cheeks. "I'm sorry. About the plane. About calling you. What I called you. About everything. I was a monster. I thought I was better than you. I was wrong." Chloe looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. A small, genuine nod. "Apology accepted," Chloe said. "Good luck, Cynthia. I hope you find your way." The window rolled up. The black car pulled away, merging into the traffic of the busy New Jersey street, disappearing into the grey afternoon. Cynthia stood at the window, watching the taillights fade. Behind her, Kyle was yelling, "Cynthia, we got 3 cars waiting. Snap out of it. We're losing time." Cynthia wiped her face with the back of her hand. She took a deep breath. For the first time in 6 months, the knot of anger, bitterness, and entitlement in her chest loosened just a fraction. It wasn't gone, but it was lighter. She turned back to the register. She pressed the button for the next order. "Welcome to Burger Barn," she said. And for the first time, her voice wasn't flat. It wasn't angry, it was just human. "How can I help you today?" The new normal 3, more months passed. The seasons turned from the humid summer to a crisp, cold autumn. Cynthia didn't become a saint overnight. That only happens in movies. In real life, change is slow. She still got annoyed when customers were slow to order. She still missed her silk sheets and her facials. But something fundamental had shifted in her architecture. One evening, after her shift ended at 11 p.m., she was walking to the bus stop. It was pouring rain again, a cold, biting rain. She saw a young girl, maybe 18, sitting on a bench, shivering. She was soaked to the bone, crying into a phone. "I don't have enough for the fare, Mom," the girl was sobbing into the device. "I lost my wallet. I'm stuck here. Please pick up." Old Cynthia would have walked past. She would have judged the girl for not being prepared. She would have clutched her purse tighter. She would have worried about getting her own coat wet. But new Cynthia stopped. She looked at the girl. She saw the fear in her eyes. She remembered the feeling of being stranded at JFK, watching the world turn its back on her. She remembered the feeling of being looked at like you were nothing. Cynthia reached into her pocket. She pulled out her tips for the day. It was $30. It was her grocery money for the week. It was the difference between eating fresh vegetables and eating instant noodles. She walked over to the bench. "Here," Cynthia said, holding out the crumpled bills. The girl looked up, startled. She flinched, expecting to be told to move along. "What?" "Take it," Cynthia said. "Get a cab. Go home. It's not safe out here." I can't take this," the girl said, eyes wide. "Are you sure? This is a lot of money." "I'm sure," Cynthia said. She smiled. It was a rusty, crooked smile, but it was real. It reached her eyes. "Someone once told me that power is about lifting people up. I'm not powerful, but I can do this." The girl took the money, her hands shaking. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I didn't think anyone cared." "Just pay it forward," Cynthia said, "when you can." She walked the rest of the way to her apartment in the rain. She was wet. She was hungry. She was broke. She would have to eat toast for dinner for the next 3 days. But as she climbed the stairs to her basement room, Cynthia Cromwell realized something strange. She had less money than she had ever had in her life. She had no status, no husband, no diamonds, no platinum medallion card. But for the first time in her life, she felt light. She wasn't carrying the weight of the mask anymore. She wasn't carrying the burden of pretending to be better than everyone else. She wasn't exhausted from the effort of maintaining an illusion. She was just Cynthia. She made burgers. She took the bus. She helped a stranger. And as she lay down on her lumpy mattress that night, listening to the rain against the window, Cynthia Cromwell fell asleep instantly. It was the first peaceful sleep she had enjoyed in 20 years. Far away in a university dorm room, Chloe Sterling opened her laptop. She saw a notification on her blog where she wrote anonymous stories about life in the city. A new comment on her latest post about the importance of second chances. The comment was from a user named FreshStart55. It just said, "Thank you for the lesson. I'm finally learning that the window seat isn't the only place with a view." Chloe smiled, closed her laptop, and turned off the light. The circle was closed, the debt was paid, and the world continued to turn a little bit kinder, a little bit fairer than it was the day before. And that is the story of how a single act of arrogance brought down an empire. Cynthia thought her wealth made her invincible, but she forgot the most important currency of all: respect. She judged a book by its cover, and that book turned out to be the one that wrote her final chapter. It's a brutal reminder that in the age of cameras and consequences, karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. We often think that karma is some magical force, but sometimes it's just the natural result of how we treat people. When you treat people like they are disposable, you eventually find yourself in the trash. If you enjoyed this story of high-flying justice and instant karma, please do me a huge favor. Hit that like button to help us beat the algorithm. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story. I post new dramas every week. Let me know in the comments. Do you think Cynthia deserved her fate, or was the punishment too harsh? Did she truly redeem herself at the end? I read every comment and I'd love to know what you think. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay humble or life will humble you.